So let me tell you about the weirdest summer camp I'd ever went to, and the reason I don't mess with birch trees anymore. So this was the summer before high school. My mom shipped me off to this place called Camp Elmwood, somewhere way out in upstate New York. You know the deal. Make new friends, learn independence, whatever. It looked normal enough. There was a lake, some wooden cabins, and this huge forest out back with these tall, skinny birch trees that seemed to go on forever. The counselors were the usual overly friendly, way too energetic types, and I got assigned to cabin C, right at the edge of the woods. My bunkmate was the quiet kid named Ethan. He kept fiddling with this old Walkman, barely talking. I remember thinking, great, the weird kid, just my luck. That first night, after lights out, some of the other guys started daring each other to sneak out. Typical camp stuff. Somebody whispered about a birch boy who lived in the woods, snatching campers who wandered out at night. I rolled my eyes, but they all swore it was true. Of course, they picked me, new kid, for a dare. Go into the birch woods, tap on the biggest tree and whisper, "Come find me." If I made it back without checking out, I'd get the top bunk for the whole week. Easy, right? I grabbed my flashlight and tiptoed out. The woods felt colder than I expected, and the birch trees looked the same. White trunks, like skeletons in the moonlight. I found the thickest one and did the dare. Feeling dumb. "Come find me," I whispered, then booked it back, heart thumping. I got back and everyone was laughing, except Ethan, who just stared at me, pale. He whispered, "You shouldn't have done that." Didn't think much of it until around 3 a.m. I woke up to this scratching sound right outside our window. It sounded almost deliberate, like nails on wood. Everyone else was knocked out. I peeked out, expecting to see a raccoon or something, but all I saw was a white pale face, like a kid, staring up from behind a birch tree, way too still. His eyes reflected the moonlight, big and glassy. I ducked down and tried to convince myself I was just seeing things. The next morning, camp was buzzing. One of the girls in cabin A, Jade, hadn't come back after sneaking out. The counselors did their "everything's fine, don't panic" routine, but you could feel the tension. They sent out a search party, but the woods were too dense. Ethan wouldn't talk to anyone. At breakfast, he finally muttered, "Did you see him?" I tried to play dumb, but he said, "He waits for someone to ask. That's how it starts." That day, I started noticing weird things. Whenever I got close to the birch woods, I felt like something was watching me. The counselors wouldn't let anyone near the trees now, but during archery, I saw, swear on my life, a figure in all white standing between the trunks, just far enough you couldn't make out details. When I looked away and looked back, it was gone. That night, I barely slept, scratching again. This time, it was closer, like right under our window. When I finally looked, a pale hand slid up the glass, fingers impossibly long. Then it was gone. I woke up Ethan, who just said, "It won't stop unless you put it back." The next day, I confronted Ethan. He finally broke. He said, "My brother disappeared here 2 years ago. They said he just got lost, but he was dared to do the same thing. They never found him, but sometimes, at night, I see someone standing in the trees wearing his old camp shirt." He showed me a photo on his Walkman. Yep, same shirt I saw in the woods. That last night, storm clouds rolled in. Power flickered. Most of the counselors were searching for Jade, but me and Ethan sat on our bunks, barely talking. Around midnight, we heard footsteps outside. Light, careful, almost shuffling. Suddenly, the door slammed open. Cold wind rushed in, and the room felt like it dropped 20 degrees. I swear, for half a second, I saw that same pale face right in the doorway, lips moving, but no sound coming out. Ethan grabbed my arm, whispering, "It wants you to come back. You called it." I don't know what made me do it. Guilt? Fear? I grabbed my flashlight and ran outside, Ethan close behind. The woods looked alive, shadows moving between the birch trunks. We found the big tree from the first night. My flashlight flickered, then died. We stood there shivering. The wind started up, and for a second, I heard a voice whisper, "Come find me." Branches snapped behind us. A hand shot out, grabbing Ethan's shoulder. He screamed. I yanked him back, and two of us ran all the way to the lake, not looking back. The next morning, the storm was gone. Jade was found safe but confused on the other side of the lake. She didn't remember how she got there. The counselor said it was just camp jitters, but I know what I saw. As we packed to leave, I caught one last look at the woods. There, by the biggest birch tree, was the same pale figure watching us go. I never went back to Camp Elmwood, and now, every time I see birch trees, I get chills. If you ever get dared to call something out in the woods, don't. If you made it to the end, drop a ghost emoji in the comments. And remember, some dares are better left undone. I'll never forget the summer I was a junior counselor at Camp Elmwood. The place was old, like creaky floorboards and faded Polaroids on the walls. Old. Elmwood was known for its lakes and its dumb traditions, but it had this weird energy, like the trees were holding on to secrets no one was supposed to dig up. It started as one of those perfect July weeks. The new campers were still wide-eyed, and even the senior staff seemed relaxed. Nobody expected anything to go sideways. But then, well, let me walk you through it. One morning, I woke up to the loudest whistle blast I'd ever heard. I rolled out of my bunk thinking maybe we were late for roll call, but the camp director, Mr. Adams, looked stressed out of his mind. He was shouting something about, "Check your cabins, and everybody meet by the flagpole. Now!" That's when we found out Sarah, a quiet 14-year-old girl from Cabin Pine, was missing. She wasn't at breakfast, and her bunk was untouched. Nobody saw her after last night's campfire. The cops were called, but in the meantime, they had us all lining up, checking names and scouring the woods. I remember the way everyone's voices sounded, too loud, too fake, like we were all acting in some twisted weird play. About 2 hours into the search, a scream ripped through the trees. Seriously, I thought my heart stopped. I sprinted over and found two campers frozen, pointing at a bush near the edge of the lake. Tangled in the branches was a bright red bandana, the kind you see at a dollar store. It didn't belong to any campers or staff. Here's the thing. Elmwood had this old legend about the red bandana. Supposedly back in the 80s, there was a counselor who got fired for something bad. Nobody ever said what. And before he left, he tied a red bandana to a tree near the water. That's just a dumb story though, right? Or so I thought. The cops took the bandana and started asking around. That's when stuff got weirder. Sarah's best friend, Zoe, said Sarah had found one just like it under her pillow a few days before. She thought someone was playing a prank, but now the bandana was at the lake. That night, nobody slept. The crickets outside sounded way too loud, and every shadow looked suspicious. I heard whispering outside my cabin and peeked out the window, just two campers sneaking back from the bathrooms. Still, I felt like someone was watching me from the tree line. Next morning, police found Sarah's water bottle in the woods, about a mile from the camp. Then, another bandana, this time tied to a low branch, almost like it was marking a trail. The counselors tried to keep us calm, but the kids were spooked, especially when they learned about the bandana legend. A couple of them swore they'd seen a figure standing by the lake at night, just barely visible. A grown man in old camp clothes, face hidden. Day 3, things escalated. One of the counselors, Lex, disappeared. Just gone. No note, no nothing. Her phone was found in the staff lounge, still playing a music playlist on low volume. Then, someone noticed a new red bandana tied right to the doorknob of Lex's cabin. Cops started combing the woods full time, but now, even the adults looked scared. They called in extra help. Helicopters buzzed overhead, and nobody was allowed out of sight. But the scariest thing, there was no sign of a struggle. It was like people were just vanishing. On the fourth night, I got assigned to supervise a group of panicked kids in the rec cell. Around midnight, one little dude started hyperventilating. He said he saw Sarah outside the window, just standing there, staring in. I rushed over, but of course, nobody was there. Still, it sent chills down my spine. An hour later, one of the search dogs started barking at the far end of the lake. We all watched from the window as the cops rushed over. They found a half-collapsed shack, way deeper in the woods than any of us knew about. Inside, they found Sarah's missing flashlight, a couple of blankets, and a stack of Polaroids. Every Polaroid was a shot of a different kid, each one taken at night through cabin windows. The next morning, new trucks rolled up, and parents started yanking their kids out of camp. The entire place was in lockdown, but by then, everyone had heard the rumor. The person behind the disappearance wasn't a stranger. It was someone on staff. Turns out, the new groundskeeper, Mike, wasn't who he said he was. The real Mike had never shown up for the job. This guy had been living on the property for weeks, watching us, sneaking through cabins at night, leaving red bandanas as his calling card. He'd been a former counselor, fired decades ago for inappropriate behavior, and nobody did a real background check when he reapplied under a fake name. The cops finally caught him near the shack, trying to pack up and leave. Both Sarah and Lex were found alive, just scared and dehydrated. He kept them locked up, telling them the red bandana man would let them go if they played along. Camp Elmwood closed for good that summer. The legend of the red bandana man turned real, and nobody wanted to mess with it anymore. But sometimes, I still see flashes of red in the corner of my eye, especially at night. When I think about those woods, I'll never look at a summer camp the same way again. And if you ever find a red bandana where it doesn't belong, just go the other way. Trust me. I still remember the smell of mosquito spray and pine needles. Camp Elmwood wasn't fancy, but every year it pulled in kids from all over North Carolina, promising bonfires, canoe races, and a week with no Wi-Fi. Parents loved it. Kids mostly survived it. That July, I was 15 and signed up as a junior counselor, which is just code for doing chores for the older counselors. My assigned cabin was Raccoon Lodge. It was the oldest one, tucked way back, kind of leaning into the woods. Nobody really liked being in Raccoon Lodge, not because of ghosts or legends, but because it always smelled damp and the windows were barely opened. The first few days were normal. Kids complained about oatmeal, we played a lot of dodgeball, and someone managed to break the ancient foosball table. There was one night, though, that sticks out. Our counselor, Taylor, handed out flashlights and announced a glow hike after dark. The idea was to walk the lake trail and spot glow-in-the-dark painted rocks. That night was humid and sticky. The woods felt close. Everyone was in good spirits until we reached the edge of the lake, and Parker, the youngest kid in our cabin, started freaking out. "Something's moving in the trees," he whispered, tugging on my sleeve. At first I figured he was just jumpy, but then I heard it, a sharp, snappy sound like a branch being stepped on. Taylor laughed it off, told us to keep moving, but the air felt heavier after that. On the way back, we lost one of the flashlights. When we got back to the cabin, it was late, so we crashed quick. That's when things started getting weird. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to the sound of running water. I thought maybe one of the kids was up to pee, but everyone was in bed. I sat up and listened. It sounded like water was running right underneath us. I slipped out of my bunk and stepped onto the freezing floorboards, trying not to wake anyone. The noise led me to the bathroom, but the faucets were dry. Still, I could hear water gurgling somewhere under the cabin. Suddenly, something slammed into the wall outside. I damn near dropped my flashlight. By the time I opened the door and peeked out, there was nothing but mist and a raccoon shuffling into the bushes. Heart pounding, I went back inside, chalking it up to the critters that gave the cabin its name. But when I lay down, I noticed Parker sitting up in his bunk, eyes wide. "Did you see the man under the cabin?" he whispered. I wanted to laugh, but something in his voice made my skin crawl. The next day, Parker wouldn't talk to anyone. At breakfast, he just stared at his cereal. I told Taylor, but she brushed it off as homesickness. After lunch, I found a weird puddle by the side of the cabin, right beneath Parker's bunk window. The grass was flattened, and I noticed little streaks of mud like something had been dragged. I pointed it out to one of the older counselors, Brian, but he just shrugged. "Probably a raccoon or a skunk, dude. That's why it's called Raccoon Lodge." That night we played cards late, trying to lighten the mood. When the kids finally crashed, I stayed up reading. Around 1 a.m., I started hearing scratching noises. At first I thought it was another animal, but the sound kept circling the cabin, always just below the windows. Then, 3 sharp knocks, right under Parker's window. This time, I ran outside, flashlight in hand. The beam cut through the mist, lighting up the trees and nothing else. The only thing out there was a fresh puddle, dark and shiny, soaking into the dirt. I squatted down and realized it reeked like mud, but something metallic. I was starting to get a little freaked out. I texted my mom mostly as a joke about raccoon ghost. She just sent a laughing emoji, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us. I decided to check under the cabin in daylight. There was a little hatch at the back, padlocked. The maintenance guy, Mr. Price, was eating lunch nearby, so I asked him about it. "Crawl spaces floods every year. Pipes under there are ancient. I wouldn't mess with it," he said, then winked, "unless you want to fight a raccoon." But that night, the water sound came back, louder than ever. It was almost like someone whispering, gurgling through the pipes. Around 3 a.m., Parker started crying, not loud, but a low whimpering. I sat on his bed and tried to comfort him. He just stared at the floor and mumbled, "He's under us." Right then, I heard scratching sound inside the vent. Sudden, the whole bunk shuddered. Parker screamed. All the other kids woke up wide-eyed. We ended up huddled in the counselor's room until morning. Taylor was pissed, but called maintenance anyway. Mr. Price opened the hatch and crawled under with a flashlight. He was only under there for a minute before he shouted, "Who's been messing with this?" He crawled out holding a soggy, mud-stained camp sweatshirt. The weird part? It was from last year, and the name tag on it was faded but still readable. Jason M. There hadn't been any Jason M. at camp this year. Word spread fast. Parker's mom picked him up early. Taylor called a meeting and said it was just some trash left behind. But the other kids wouldn't go near the crawl space. After lunch, a cop car showed up. Just one. The officer talked quietly with the head counselor and then walked out behind Raccoon Lodge, squatting by the hatch. I overheard bits and pieces. Something about missing last summer. Water table and remains. I felt sick. That night, nobody slept. The scratching started again, right on cue. But this time, we all just lay there frozen. Every once in a while, someone would whisper, I swear, in the dark, I saw a shape outside, hunched and watching, its eyes reflecting my flashlight. They moved us out of Raccoon Lodge the next morning, but I stayed back to help pack. While I was dragging a trunk across the floor, one of the old warped boards snapped underneath. I saw a wet patch of dirt and something shiny. I reached down and found a little metal pin, the kind you get from coming in second at a canoe race. Suddenly, the smell of wet earth hit me so hard I gagged, and then, just for a second, I heard a muffled voice bubbling up from the dark below the cabin floor. "Let me out!" I ran outside, didn't look back, and slept in the nurse's office until my mom picked me up. I never went back to Camp Elmwood. A few months later, my mom showed me a news article. They found a body underneath Raccoon Lodge, buried in the mud, wrapped in an old camp sweatshirt. The headline said it was ruled an accident death, but the article never mentioned the noises or the face Parker swore he saw staring up at him from the crawl space vent. Some nights, I still hear water running under my bed, and sometimes, just sometimes, I swear, I hear a voice whispering, "He's underneath us." You ever hear about Camp Elmwood? Not the one they reopened last summer, the old one, back when they had those weird green bunks and the cabins always smelled like wet socks. I spent a summer there, 2014, and I swear some of what happened never made it into the papers. I was a junior counselor, which basically meant I was old enough to have a cell phone, but not old enough to get paid for the job. The older counselors would make us play capture the flag with the kids, scrape burnt marshmallows off sticks, that kind of stuff. But every night before lights out, the main counselor, Miss Betty, would lock up the rec hall and double check all cabins. She was real strict about it. Now, the rec hall was this old building, creaking floors, barely any light. One of those places that felt colder than the rest of the camp even in July. It was where they kept the art supplies, first aid kits, and this old file cabinet full of camp records. No one was allowed near it. First week, nothing weird. Kids running around, somebody peed in the lake, typical stuff. But then, second week, this new camper, Josh, starts getting up in the middle of the night, sleepwalking. At first, or at least, that's what we thought. He'd wander out of his bunk, stand by the flagpole, just staring into the woods. Sometimes, when I'd walk him back, he'd mumble about a girl named Anna. No Anna in our cabin, or in camp. I checked the list. Just a few days later, it's almost midnight, I'm on flashlight duty, doing rounds, and I hear something slam in the rec hall. I'm thinking, probably a possum. So I peek through the window, no possum. Instead, I see Josh, barefoot, hair sticking up, yanking at the old file cabinet. He looks right at me, eyes wide, like he sees something behind me. My heart just about leaps out my chest. For a split second, I see a figure in the reflection behind him, like someone in a white nightgown. I spin around, nothing. But now, I'm not feeling so brave. Next day, Miss Betty's real tense, snaps at everyone, and then calls an all-camp meeting. She says no one is to go into the rec hall at night. That's a rule. Everyone nods, but that afternoon, Josh's cabin mate, Tyler, whispers to me that Josh keeps saying Anna's trapped, like whispering it to himself like he's scared. I finally decide to ask Miss Betty straight up, was there an Anna at this camp? She freezes, looks at me for a second, too long, and then just walks away. That's when I know something's off. That night, I'm lying in my bunk, can't sleep. I hear footsteps outside, crunching in the gravel. I grab my flashlight and sneak out. The moon's bright, but the woods look like just shadows and more shadows. I follow the noise to the rec hall. Doors open. I walk in, dead silent, except for Josh, standing in front of the file cabinet, pulling out a drawer. Before I can stop him, he yanks it so hard it falls out and crashes to the ground. Papers go everywhere. Something clicks. I look closer. Inside, the bottom of the drawer is an old metal key and a yellow folder labeled Camp Incident, 1998. Josh just points at it, shaking. "Anna's in the lake," he whispers, voice all cracked and dry. That's when the lights go out. Whole rec hall goes black. I hear the door slam shut. I fumble for my phone, hands shaking, and hear water dripping, but it hasn't rained in days. Then, clear as day, a girl's scream rips through the dark, high and sharp. I almost drop my phone. Josh starts sobbing. Eventually, I wedge the door open and we both run back to the cabins. I barely sleep. Next morning, I read the folder while everyone's at breakfast. The pages inside are police reports. One about a missing camper, Anna Wexler, 1998, disappeared during a midnight swim. Search turned up nothing but a single shoe by the pier. Miss Betty's name is all over the witness statements. There's a note clipped to the last paper. Do not discuss with campers. That afternoon, I confront Miss Betty with the folder. She turns pale, grabs my arm and says, "Leave it alone. Anna's gone. You don't want to end up like her." She mean it. But the thing is, the key in the drawer, I recognize it. It's the old boathouse key. That night, I can't let it go. I sneak out, grab Josh. He's awake waiting. And we head to the lake. Everything's dead quiet, except the water, gentle lapping at the dock. We use the key. Boathouse door groans open. Smells like mold and lake water. Inside, it's pitch black. My flashlight barely works. We find a trunk in the back, covered in dust. I pop it open. Inside is a faded towel, a notebook, and a child's locket with a AW scratched into it. Suddenly, the door slams shut behind us. I whip around, hear footsteps on the dock. Through the cracks, I see a figure in white, dripping wet, long hair, stuck to her face, just staring at us. Josh starts screaming. I'm frozen. My heart feels like it's about to explode. The door finally gives, and we stumble out, trip over the boards, hit the sand hard. When I look back, the figure is gone. Next day, Josh's parents pick him up early. Miss Betty resigns a week later. Camp Elmwood shuts down for renovation at the end of the summer. The cops say they dredged the lake, never found anything, but I still have Anna's locket. And sometimes, in the middle of the night, I hear water dripping in my room, even though I live on the 3rd floor now. I don't tell anyone about the dreams, because some campers don't get to go home, and some secrets, they stay at the bottom of the lake.